I've been looking at the book of Acts, and in Acts chapter 23, I'm just going to read a little bit from that chapter from verse 12. The next morning, the Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. More than 40 men were involved in this plot. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petitioned the commander to bring him before you on the pretext of wanting more accurate information about his case. We are ready to kill him before he gets here." But when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he went into the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him." So he took him to the commander. The centurion said, "Paul, the prisoner, sent for me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." And so he goes to explain the situation, the plot that's happening, and the concerns for Paul's safety. So this little passage in Acts 23 about the plot to kill the Apostle Paul reminded me of a situation I was reading about yesterday and seeing a documentary that was based on it, and it's really about the situation around Hitler, who was several times the target of a plot to assassinate him. Now, Hitler was the man who people began to realise was involved in all sorts of evil deeds, as people well know, the SS, what they were doing, and the camps, concentration camps, and obviously all the stuff that revolved around his regime. And so there are those who felt that it was important to actually get rid of him and put in a new government. And Paul seems to be an incredible threat as well to people's view of the world. The thing is that Paul is not a man full of doing evil deeds and causing terrible evil things to happen. That's who he used to be. He used to be a man who was involved in killing people, in doing terrible things to good people. But actually, he's quite the opposite. And so it's interesting the way in which he's perceived to be such a serious threat to the Jewish people and certainly to the Jewish authorities is quite noticeable in this chapter. And what's also amazing is that he is spared. He's spared by just a relative hearing something and then getting that word back to Paul. And in actual fact, what we begin to see in this part of Acts is the amazing machinery of the Roman, the powers that be, coming into operation and really saving Paul's life and putting a lot of resources into sparing him and making sure he's protected. And I find this really incredible because Paul's relationship to the Roman state, in the end was a very, very difficult one. I mean, he ended up being martyred. His relationship to authorities in different places weren't always the easy ones at all. And certainly he came under tremendous fire at times, and he faced great persecution. The Romans didn't automatically receive him. He was not always received well among Gentiles, and he's not always received well amongst the Jews. But in this case, amazingly, the significance is that the authorities, the powers that be, have such an important role to play in protecting Paul's life and actually making sure that he finally gets to Rome, as we'll see later on in Acts. And so we sometimes find that help comes from an unusual source, and help comes from people, even powers that we don't expect to help us. Sometimes God sends them as part of the answer to our prayer and a solution to our problems. And so don't underestimate what God will do through all sorts of means and ways. and how he can use things for his glory and for the blessing of God's people as well. So my prayer today is that God will help us to be open to any source of help that he sends that is uh, part of his purpose and plan. When it might not always look like the one that we would choose, when it might not always look like the people that we would think are the nicest people, or the people we really get on with, or the people that we feel are on our side. But nevertheless, may we be open to realize that God will sometimes send us help from unusual sources, and he'll often use unusual people in our family as well. So in this case, um, son of Paul's sister was instrumental in passing on information, and actually that was also a real lifesaver at that point. So Lord, help us to be open to allow you to use members of our family. Sometimes they're not always understanding us. Sometimes they're not always agreeing with us. Sometimes we might not appreciate them in the way that we should, but help us to allow you to use them anyway, and give us the humility to accept that you are helping and working for our good and in our lives through lots of different people, lots of different ways, and through often the most unlikely ones of all. Many blessings on you, and I pray that helps you.